this expectation that we have where it's just like, yeah, babies should just grow up and like this, you know, they should grow up instantly and we don't care. I don't know why we can't just let babies be babies. Yes, kids need attention. Babies especially need their mother's attention. And this is just completely biologically appropriate and normal. This is how a baby ensures that they're going to survive. It's by staying close to their mother and feeling safe only with their mother. We have another set of motherhood stories today, this time all about the topic of attention. We have such a negative perception of attention seeking as a culture, but surely it's normal for kids to need attention, right? Today we'll be talking about daycare, vacation, dealing with annoying comments, and answering the question of, do kids need mental health days? Our first one is titled, Daycare Says Baby Needs a Lot of Attention. My daycare mentioned that my daughter doesn't have too much interest in toys, more so wants attention from one of the teachers all the time. She always wants to be picked up. Any tips for what I should do at home to help? I didn't think I was overdoing it. I let her play on her own, but maybe I shouldn't pick her up as much. But I really only get to spend a little time during the week and weekends with her, so that's hard for me. Now, OP answers in the comments that she's talking about a 6-7 month old baby here. So not a very old baby. Honestly, this is one of the statements that would irritate me so much. Probably because if I had a young child, let's say under the age of 1, I would already be kind of not into the idea of putting them in daycare. And if I'm already kind of ambivalent about that, I'm a bit critical of that. And generally speaking, I don't think that kids that young should be totally separated from their parents for a big chunk of the day. And especially if you're working like an 8-hour day, plus let's say you have an hour to get to work and an hour to get back and pick your kid up, and then you put them to sleep at like 7 or 8 p.m. at night, then the amount of time that you're actually spending with your child is very little. So I already have a lot of strong feelings about not liking daycare. But if I were to take myself out of that mindset and go, okay, you know what, I have to do it because I need to work and we need to make money and it's just there's no way to avoid it, then if I paid a daycare that called me up and was like, hey, you know what, your kid isn't too happy just playing by herself for long periods of time and she seems to actually want social interactions, kind of annoying, and you need to start training her to stop wanting to be around people and dealing with people, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's a crappy daycare. That's not a daycare that I want to put my kid in. Why? Because kids do need social interaction. And especially that very early phase of life, they are completely dependent on adults around them. And so they spend a lot of time just trying to make eye contact. My son does this thing where if one of us walks into the room, then he tries really hard just to make eye contact, just to see that person. And then if that person doesn't react to them at all, like if it's me or my husband and we don't actually react to him, then he gets really upset and he'll start crying. And he does this because he cares about making social connections with the people around him. So yeah, no, I would not be doing something at home to make my kid more independent and therefore cutting off my interactions with her and spending less time with her so that she learns to just be better by herself. That sounds terrible, and I would probably honestly look for a different daycare. But you can see some of the responses from other people. One person here asks, how much time does she spend playing independently at home? And OP replies, independent, meaning completely by herself, maybe 5 minutes at a time until she wants me or my husband to interact with her. And the original person replies, yeah, okay, that might be it. If we put our kiddo in playpen, he is okay by himself for 1 hour at a time. Then we grab him, play with him, or he hangs out on the sofa with us, but he spends loads of time on his own. Also, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes on the floor exploring stuff around the house, not in a playpen. Now, I think it's normal to say, okay, I let my kid play by himself quite often. I do this as well. You just put them on the floor and you let them explore and you just watch them to make sure that they don't get into anything potentially dangerous. But this idea of I lock him in a little pen and I leave him there for an hour, I couldn't do this. And I'm not sure I could convince myself that this is the best possible way to parent, to be honest. But maybe she was just blessed with an extremely independent child who was much more engaged and interactive with the environment around them. And so maybe for this kid, that's the way that it has to be. But I'm pretty sure this is not the majority of kids, because I think the majority of kids really rely a lot on the social engagement part. Another comment here, my little guy is the same, but at home he has a very short attention span with toys. He would rather I play with him or sit with him while he plays. I feel like we think they've grown so much in such a short time, but we have to remember that they're still so little and they need all of our love. There is no such thing as too much. I think that we've gotten so obsessed on a societal level with this idea of independence and freedom. And I don't even think that this is bad. I'm very much into the Montessori style, which does the whole point of it, the whole purpose of it is to try and teach your kids to be as independent as they can be, and to meet them at their level and the point at which they're able to. So it's not about just leaving them and neglecting them, but rather at setting up your environment in such a way that they're not completely dependent on you for everything that they need. And I think that's awesome for kids. I think it also helps you really respect them and treat them on a completely different level. Treat them as little people rather than as kind of extensions of yourself, without their own personality and desires and wishes and needs and everything else that a person has. So it's not even that I'm against this idea of independence, but I don't know why we've gotten to this point where we think that there is something bad about a baby that wants attention, because obviously babies can only learn how to be human to a large extent. This is okay. Maybe I can already hear all the philosophical disagreements about babies are already human. Yes, of course they're human, but let's say they can only socialize. And they can only be socialized through actual interaction with other people. Babies can only learn to talk and to speak by watching other people talk and speak. They do a lot of copying, they mirror what you're doing. They only learn how to express their emotions by seeing how you express your emotions. If you actually spend time properly engaging with a child and really looking at how they observe everything that's going on around them so that they understand how to engage with things, how to use their hands, how to use their feet, how to use their bodies, how to sit up, how to speak, and how to express themselves, all of these things, they only learn through copying people. And so this idea that already as a baby, you just want to dump the baby somewhere and have them just do things by themselves seems so sad, because you're actually depriving them of the opportunity to learn and to explore, and to make connections with people in a way that's actually kind of harmful. So it's really rough. Another comment here, 7-month-old babies are not supposed to play independently and be adept at self-soothing. They're babies. You pay daycare to love on your little one, to give attention and snuggles and soothing when you aren't there. Do not allow them to make you feel like you need to do anything differently. God, do people really pay daycare to love on their kids when they're not there? Does anyone really objectively believe that the people at daycare, even the most amazing daycare in the world, can they really care about your children the way that you care about your own children? Is that how it works? This idea of do not allow them to make you feel like you need to do anything differently. I mean, yeah, of course not. You're the parent. They're people that you're paying to look after your child because you do not have the circumstances or the situation in which you're able to look after them 100% of the time. And that's okay. I'm not judging making that choice for people. Like I said, it's not a choice that I would make, but I can understand that things happen that mean that that's the choice that has to be made for someone else. But this presentation of daycare is, it's basically the equivalent of parenting. It's obviously not. Don't lie to yourself. And one final comment, my daughter is the exact same way. I stay home with her and there's absolutely no way she would be happy or content playing by herself or self-soothing. She's a very high needs girl and would much rather have mine or my husband's attention than play on her own. The longest I've gotten her to go is 10 minutes. Some babies would just rather have human interaction. There's nothing wrong with that. Just difference in babies. I don't think that there are very many people in general who really like just sitting by themselves in the corner of a room and just occupying themselves. Like, I know that we've gotten to this point as adults where we work remotely and so on. But you know what people often say about remote work as well? The biggest problems with remote work are loneliness and inability to decompress. So people have a really hard time turning off and stopping work when they're at home anyway all the time and they have nothing better to do with their lives anyway. And so the loneliness, though, is by and large, but in the vast majority of surveys, loneliness is the top problem that people have with remote work. You know what that tells you? That tells you that we as people are social animals, and babies are babies. So the expectation that babies would be any different when we need a lot of social interaction as well is just wrong and evil. And yeah, this is not a great daycare. Would not do it. The next one is titled Vacation, Leaving Baby at 6 months old. Experienced mamas, I need advice. First time mom here and I'm freaking out. My husband and I had a cruise we had booked for February. Before we knew about our little dude, we decided to reschedule since I wouldn't be able to do the excursions or partake in the margarita and taco bar. We were given a year to reschedule in order to not lose the deposit. So my husband just rebooked it for January. I'm due at the end of July, so our little man will be about 6 months old. My husband's parents grandparents who are awesome are more than happy to come down and stay with him. They are well broken in grandparents with 7 grandkids, ages newborn to 11 years old. Question for you, would you leave your 6-month-old for a week? Is that crazy? My husband is not worried at all. I tend to worry about everything, so he's not taking my concerns too seriously. I would not be leaving a 6-month-old baby for a week. I think that's a ridiculous amount of time. I could see you leaving him for a day, for 2 days. A week just seems like an insanely long period of time. I would not be able to have fun, honestly, if I were to go on holiday without my 6-month-old baby. I wouldn't be able to have fun because I would spend the whole time being like, man, I should be there. And I think one of the really sad things about this idea of just not being present, I imagine that a lot of people when they're parents, they feel burnt out, right? Because you never get to switch off. And one of the frustrating things that comes up for a lot of people as well is this idea of, okay, you know what, I'm going to make some time for myself. I'm going to go on holiday. And then when you find that when you're on holiday, you actually spend most of the time super anxious and super stressed out. And some part of this, of course, is personality, and maybe you should work on being a bit less neurotic and a bit less anxious in general. But I think that some part of it is this feeling of there is something else that I should be doing with my time right now, and I am neglecting my child by not being there for them. And I think when you have a 6-month-old baby who's super dependent on you as a mother, especially, this is a pretty normal feeling that you have. So I would not be able to do this. Again, I understand that people make different parenting choices, and you can probably do it if you want, and maybe you don't care. Maybe this is just a different subset of people who would be super anxious being in that situation, but I just would not be able to go and have fun and be relaxed and actually make the most of the opportunity to be on holiday without my baby being there as well. So I wouldn't do it. I think people honestly underestimate the number of circumstances and the opportunities that they have when it comes to going on holiday with their kids. So I would just try to involve my child as much as possible. And honestly, a 6-month-old doesn't need so much. You always have this image of like everything is chaos and you need to pack up like 50 million things and so on. It doesn't have to be that way, especially when kids are very, very young. Then honestly, all they need is just clothes and food and shelter, and they need to be held and they just need to be close to you. And that's it. So yeah, would I do it in her circumstances? No, but maybe, again, not judging anyone. She can do whatever she wants. You can see some of the comments here. I would definitely go enjoy myself with my husband if I had a reliable babysitter. In your case, great grandparents who will protect and take care of the baby as if it were their own. You can call often or even set up a camera so that you can check in on the baby from time to time. Parents definitely need vacations with and away from kids, especially in a marriage. We rarely get away from our kids and are having number 4 in 3 weeks. Please, if you have the means to do it, have fun with your partner. There is more to life and a marriage than being in a house with kiddos 24/7. You need that mental break. And the funny thing is, I agree with almost everything she says here. I do think that parents should be able to go on holiday without their kids as well, and that having a mental break is awesome, and you don't need to be around your kids 24/7. I agree with all of that. I just don't think that it's appropriate to do this when you have a 6-month-old, for myself, again. Next comment, it's really hard to leave your baby for the first time, but once you get past the leaving part, the break is really nice. I think 6 months is totally reasonable. As long as your babe is with someone you trust explicitly, which it sounds like you do, I think you should go and enjoy yourself. Fair warning, whenever I leave my daughter, who is now 2, I cry for a moment once we're apart. It's overwhelming, but it's so good for everyone, and she has the best time being spoiled by her grandparents. I'm a bit more okay with the idea of leaving a 2-year-old for a little bit longer, but yeah, I think 6 months is totally reasonable. Nah, these are the words of someone who I'm pretty sure does not breastfeed or didn't choose to breastfeed, because yeah, no, with a 6-month-old you can't manage breastfeeding at the same time. Final comment, yes, go and enjoy yourself. You will be ready for a break and some time to just relax with your husband. I'd leave mine if I knew they were in good hands, and you sound like you have the perfect babysitters. By 6 months, they should be on a decent schedule and sleeping through the night, or mostly sleeping through the night. This is a lie. This is not normal. The majority of 6-month-old babies don't have to be on a schedule, and I'm pretty sure they would not naturally end up in a schedule. And the idea that they would all be sleeping through the night is also a complete lie. Like, yes, people do say that you can start sleep training already at 4 months. And you can teach your kids eventually to sleep by themselves, but sleep training also fails for some couples. And just, I don't know why people make these promises. no, I would not be able to make this decision also before the baby is born, when you don't know what it's going to be like. Like maybe you end up with a really colicky baby, a really needy baby, a baby that cries a lot and needs to be held a lot, and so on. And maybe under those circumstances, you need the time off even more, sure. But would I feel comfortable leaving a baby who's having a hard time with their grandparents and just not being around for a full week? No. Especially when it's a cruise and there's no easy way for me to cut the trip short and be like, okay, I'm gonna go home now, my baby needs me. So yeah, this is obviously my perspective, but nah, babies just there is this part, I think, when we become parents where we value the idea of freedom and independence so much that the fact that you have something that is really dependent on you and that really needs your presence and needs you there for any period of time, it's something that we fight against. It's annoying, it's frustrating, and I get that, but it's honestly also just a very temporary season in your life where your babies are going to be that young that they need you there, and then it's going to be over. By the time you have a kid that's a year old, that's 2 years old, that's 3 years old, then suddenly they're not going to need you to anywhere near the same extent anyway, and then you can go on as many cruises as you like, right? Short-term sacrifice is not a big deal. The next one is titled LO, which is short for little one, loves you too much, etc. So we saw my mother-in-law for the first time since Christmas. Shout out to those who read about my horrible Christmas, where amongst other rude things, my mother-in-law told me I'm raising a monster. Because I take my daughter back when she cries. Anyway, we saw mother-in-law for the first time since then, and she had lots of nice little comments for me. Your baby is going to have mommy issues because she only hangs out with you. Your baby loves you too much. It's not normal for her to be crying so much when someone else is holding her. Your baby has separation anxiety. Your baby is getting social anxiety because she doesn't see enough people. You're only making a problem for yourself by getting her so attached to you. No one is ever going to be able to watch her. I wish it stopped there or never started, but that is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that she had to say to me because my daughter started crying when she held her. I shouldn't have to explain why my 4-month-old daughter wants to be held by me and not my mother-in-law, but here it is. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I exclusively breastfeed. My baby is entering the stranger danger phase. Mother-in-law woke her up to hold her instead of just letting her finish her nap. My baby was in an unfamiliar place, and I am her mom. I'm honestly not even upset that she gets upset when people she doesn't really know try to hold her and take her into a different room. My baby does great with people that she sees more regularly. We're staying at father-in-law's for the weekend, well, until our power comes back on. After all these comments, she gave my baby back to me and said, "You'll be coming over to my place tomorrow while your husband is at work, yeah?" I said, "Actually, the plan was to go to the park and then visit my husband's grandmother, and we'll be getting a late start, so I think it would be better if we follow the plan we made previously to stop by on Sunday for a couple of hours before we go home." She looked sad, but I honestly don't care. I might have been willing to go over there if she hadn't spent the entire time we were there telling me how I'm going to give my daughter issues because I stay home with her and don't do many visits during RSV season. Cherry on top, as she was saying goodbye, she leaned in and kissed my baby on the back of her head and said, "I can't kiss your face, but your mom has to be okay with me kissing the back of your head." Like, her inability to follow boundaries is the whole reason I keep her all to myself. I just don't understand why we get to this point where we truly believe that a 4-month-old baby should somehow be completely capable of just not caring about being held by their mother versus being held by anyone else, which is hilarious to me because honestly, when babies are born, they can recognize the smell of their mother. They obviously can recognize her voice because they hear the voice in the womb and so on. And so they have a much closer connection, a biological connection specifically to the mother. And obviously by the time they're 4-month-old, it's not like that connection is dead, right? They're literally a 4-month-old baby. They spent 9 months in the womb, and now they've been out of the womb for 4 months, which is like half that time. So this expectation that we have where it's just like, yeah, babies should just grow up and like this, you know, they should grow up instantly and we don't care. I don't know why we can't just let babies be babies. Yes, kids need attention. Babies need attention. Babies especially need their mother's attention. And this is just completely biologically appropriate and normal. This is how a baby ensures that they're going to survive. It's by staying close to their mother and feeling safe only with their mother. And yeah, there are different phases with, you know, in their life. Of course, at some point they're going to outgrow that. And yes, it is extremely dangerous when mothers are super controlling and they don't let the kids do anything that they're able to do. And they try to set up, they refuse to give them access to other people. Then obviously that's not healthy and that's not good, and that's going to be bad for the child in the long run as well. But yeah, just having this constant set of comments that people make all the time would make me extremely angry, because no, it's completely normal that you take your baby when they cry and you try to soothe them and calm them. And it's also it happens even now quite often. Our baby is a little bit older than this, but sometimes he cries specifically for me. So it's not that he wants to be soothed in general. It's rather that he's been away from me for long enough that he's like, you know what, I need my mom back. And that's, again, completely normal and biologically appropriate. So this kind of comment would make me super angry. And I think it's motivated in many ways. Maybe it's motivated by the mother-in-law wanting a bit more time and a bit more attention with the child herself already. And that's fair enough. That would then be the conversation that I'd be having. But to paint it in this light where you say this mother is a bad mother because she's restricting, she's stopping her child from being able to make connections with other people, is terrible, especially when you're talking about a 4-month-old child here. Some of the comments: she's 4 months old. Mother-in-law needs to learn to manage her expectations, and I'd be telling her as much. Mother-in-law, it seems you pictured having a grandchild as being a different experience that maybe wasn't realistic. Of course the baby is with me all the time. She's 4 months old. That's incredibly normal and healthy. Maybe do a little research about bonding, attachment, and so on. It might help you manage your expectations and see that she is incredibly normal for her age. And yeah, I wish you could reply to in-laws like this and just be like, maybe you can do your own research and find out about this. I don't think this is very realistic, and I don't think that they would do it if you said so. But yeah, this is one of those perfect examples of how messed up the narrative and the impressions that we have around babies especially are, where it's almost as if we expect babies to be more independent than in some cases we expect even adults to be. And the final one for today is titled, Should Kids Get a Mental Health Day? So I was at the bus stop this morning with my oldest son, who is 6, and I saw a good friend of mine, but she didn't have her son, who's also 6, with her. I asked her if her son is okay, and she told me that she's keeping him home today because he needs a mental health day between sports and school. He is burned out. I was surprised. I know high school kids doing this, but kindergartners, I guess, surprise me. Anyway, I'm not judging, just curious. Would you keep your kid home for a mental health day? I actually wouldn't. And I kind of struggle with this as an answer because maybe that makes you cruel as a parent. But no, I don't think that it is normal for a 6-month-old child to need a mental health day. I would question very much what is going on in their environment that is making them need that. And I understand that we live in a time right now where kids spend way too much time at school and probably have just too much going on. So maybe that's the problem. But then I would actually look into the schooling and how much time they're spending there, how much homework they have, their schedule in general. Like what happened in their life in general that resulted in them having this moment of being burned out. This is not a normal response for a 6-month-old. 6-month-old kids have, for a 6-year-old. 6-year-old kids have so much energy, have so much drive, have so much interest and so much curiosity. I would really just be worried about what am I doing to my child that they need to take a day off from school and sports and so on. If they're doing so much sports that they need time off, then I would look into that. If school is really not good for them, then I would also look into changing that, because I think that it's not natural. Like, this idea of a mental health day is something that we invented in the last 10, 20 years maybe. And that sounds to me like it's not something that was necessary for kids throughout all of history. So why is it that kids seem to need it now at a different rate? So I would really question, okay, what am I doing with my child? It's not so much that I care about my kid having a day off. Like, I think it's normal to just be like, okay, we're going to just take a day off today and do something else. And I understand, obviously, there are ebbs and flows to life in general. And there are periods of time where maybe you have a lot going on, and other periods where you have less going on, and that's normal. But But if I felt like my child was getting burned out, then I'd be seriously worried about the structure of their life in general. And you can see some of the comments here. One person says, I would allow my child the occasional mental health day if needed, like once or twice per school year. However, if sports were making him need a mental health day, then we would be cutting back on sports. And if he needed more than 1 or 2 a year, we would also be getting therapy for him. Yeah, again, it's really not that I think that there's a problem with getting professional help for your kids when they need it. But I don't know. I feel a lot like our threshold for what we consider to be normal and abnormal behavior for kids has really changed a lot. And our threshold for therapy, especially super, super low. It's like everyone needs to go to therapy these days. And a 6-year-old needing to go to therapy would make me think I've done something completely messed up in my life and in my way of raising this kid, that this is something that he actually needs right now. Which again, I'm not saying that this would be an excuse or a reason to not take him to therapy if he needed it, but I just wouldn't be making that choice quite so lightly and be like, yeah, my kid is just burned out from going to school, therefore a therapist will help us out. I think this is a perfect example of kids needing a little bit more of their parents' attention and a little bit more time with their parents. Like as a parent, you need to understand what's going on with your kid well enough that you have this sense of, okay, my kid just needs a day off, it's fine, or there's something actually wrong that we need to look into. And as far as I can tell, none of the people, everyone here is just like, yeah, it's just a mental health day. Why does it matter? Because if your kid is in a bad mental, like has bad mental health, that's a problem, right? That's not normal. Like there must be something wrong if you consider it to be so severe. If you consider their mental health to be in such bad shape that you would consider giving them therapy and letting them stay home regularly from school, then probably there's something going on with your life, right? Like, is that not a normal assumption? One other comment, as long as I knew he would have the drive motivation to make up any assignments and he wasn't scheduled to have an assessment that day, yes. I think it's important for kids to understand the importance of not pushing themselves to the burnout stage and how to handle their mental health. That being said, if sports continue to affect him, they would go before he could use them as an excuse for a second mental health day. I took mental health days back when I was in high school in the 90s, before it was a thing. And even as a teacher, I understand their importance. A kid who is feeling burnout is not going to be engaged in class. Okay, like maybe honestly, I just have completely the wrong impression of what 6-year-olds are like. And just the whole generation is suffering so much mentally that we need to do things like this all the time. And I don't know how much time kids are spending in school or in class, but maybe they're spending so much time in school and in class that they actually burn out, which is quite worrying. That's quite concerning to me. That would say to me, truly, honestly, I would take my kids out of school and I would try to homeschool if I was facing this kind of problem where I was like, my kid, especially this idea of I would cut down on the sports. Now, obviously, I have no idea how much time this kid is spending in sports, and maybe he's doing sports every day after school, and that's getting exhausting to him. But it used to be pretty normal that kids would be running outside and doing things outside all the time, that they would be playing with their friends all the time. It's not normal for kids to not have a capacity for physical exercise, again, so long as you're not shoving them in the gym and making them lift weights or something a bit too much for a child, for a growing body especially. But it's not normal for them to not be able to participate in sports. And if I had a kid that was super active and was really engaged with that, then I would think long and hard about trying to restrict that in today's day and age, where the majority of kids are actually I say the majority of kids, where more and more kids are starting to get obese and are much more into staying at home and, being on screens and so on. Like, if these are the struggles that most people are having and my kid isn't having that, then that's what I would want to protect first and foremost. So if he's burning out from this experience, I would probably look into the school part. And be like, you know what, if my kid is spending 12 hours a day outside, 8 hours in school and then 4 hours doing other things, and then obviously he's exhausted at the end of the day and he can't handle that, then probably I'm not even a parent at that point anymore. Like, I'm spending barely any time whatsoever with my child. And maybe I should be paying a little bit more attention to him. So I don't know. There's something iffy about this. I feel like if you're going to throw around terms like mental health days, it should come from a place of understanding where we are on a societal level. And yeah, we've gotten to a point where mental health is in pretty bad shape, but also we talk about mental health all the time. So maybe we're doing something wrong on both ends of that. That's all we have time for today. Feel free to like the video, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for future content. I will see you in the next one.